Steve, you're mute.
Sorry, I only see three attendees here. One is Chris Mamikos. He's going to report later on under Recreation Board. The first two from Siemens, Mr. Wood and Mr. Solomay, are in attendance. I'm going to promote them to panelists. They're the ones who are going to do the energy audits, and I assume Ms. DeMarco will take over with that. So I'm going to promote. I'm not sure if they have anything to show. I'm going to promote them to panelists. And they're both active now, so we should be ready to go.
Okay. All right, so are we starting with Borough Property Committee? Okay, none of the committee members are present, which is unfortunate, but I do have a number of things we need to cover. If you recall, last time we spoke about
Yeah, you are a member.
Yeah, I am. I'm a member.
You're the only one, yeah.
Yeah, I'm chairing, but the other two members aren't there. But I would like to share with council the investigation that we made into the borough buildings. I looked at all of just the gas and electric bills for an average year for all of our buildings, plus the street lights and the volunteer fire department. And it's about $128,000 a year that we're spending on just those two utilities, not including water and sewer or communications. And I think that is significant, and we have opportunities to do some strategic planning around not only achieving savings, but also achieving our climate goals with this kind of an operation. I looked at the Pennsylvania, I looked at the Pennsylvania Act 129 provisions. They're now in phase 4, and unlike the previous 3 phases, phase 4 does not include public buildings, schools, or institutions. So the utility services that had been available through Duquesne Light, for example, are not available to us for energy audits and energy assistance programs. Marcus, I'm getting a message that one of the participants has not been entered into the meeting.
I'm showing both here, Mr. Wood and Mr. Solomay.
But there's Eric, somebody, Eric?
Yeah, I'm on. Can you hear me?
Oh, you are.
Well, then he didn't do what I said when I sent out the invitation.
Okay, Sal, are all your team here?
Yeah, I registered not long ago,
Okay.
and I think is Sal on? Sal, can you hear us?
Oh, your name is reading Sal Solomay.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to log off and then let him log back on.
Okay, well, who's presenting? Because I'm about to.
Sal. Sal.
Okay, well then if you need to get him on instead of you.
Because we only have 2 other attendees, Angelo and Chris. So nothing with Siemens.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, bear with me.
I apologize for the delay, but I had encountered these gentlemen from Siemens Corporation at a Green Building Alliance presentation, and they were talking about energy performance contracting and how that can help public buildings not only to prioritize energy efficiency actions, but also to put a long-term plan in place for ongoing savings and performance improvement over time in the public building system. So I thought we should at least hear this out and take under consideration whether this might offer a path for us to achieve some of our goals for our own buildings. There you are. Hi, Sal.
Hey, sorry, I just having trouble connecting.
Oh, okay. Well, we're about to have you guys go ahead. Hi, Jim. And is Eric in the room with one of you two?
Eric should be, I know we were both having trouble getting on.
Okay, well, if you're presenting, I'm not going to worry about it. He can join us as he can. I wanted to have you, they have a presentation that gives us an overview of what an energy performance services arrangement might look like and how it might benefit us to pursue that. So if you could, Sal, I'm sure you can share your screen, and that way we can hear what you have to say and take that under consideration.
Okay, I am trying to figure out, let me see, how do I share? Can I just share my screen with my PowerPoint, I wonder?
So you should be able to share screen. There's a little green button that says share screen. Marcus, does he have permission to share?
Yes, yes, he
I think
does.
so.
Okay,
Anyone has, there's a green button.
okay, there's a little green button that says share screen, and if you do that, we can see what you have. There we go. Perfect.
But now he went on mute. I will unmute him.
Unmute. Okay, am I unmuted?
Yep,
Yeah.
you're
Can
good.
you see my screen? It's the full screen. It's not with the notes and everything. And next slide.
That's great. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So first and foremost, Patty and everyone, thank you so much for having us today and bringing in Siemens. And Patty, I heard you did a bit of an overview on what you would like for us to present today.
Yeah.
So I wanted to thank you for that. But first and foremost, I'm not sure if my boss, Eric, was able to join, but I do have myself and Jay Wood, who's a recent add to our team. My focus is on energy performance solutions and smart infrastructure. And where Jay Wood was actually, just joined our team a couple of days ago, was the now former vice mayor for Virginia Beach City for about 17 plus years. And he was also a council board member. So excited to have him join and provide some insight as well. If you would like to introduce yourselves, Patty, I know we're on a time crunch.
Yeah, no, I'm fine, and you all know me, so we don't need an introduction. We're all here. The other members of there are 4 members of council and our borough engineer on the line, and our borough manager.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure meeting everyone. So I'll press next slide on the button. There we go. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
So as far as the agenda, I'm going to go through rather quickly to get to performance contracting. I just wanted to cover a few notes. But ultimately, as you can see here, introductions, Siemens as an industry, future of smart cities, and performance contracting, and a couple of examples. We may or may not get to the energy law, but ultimately want to get to the point that Patty would like us to touch on. So first and foremost, just to talk about Siemens very briefly, we've been around for roughly 170 years. We have over 350,000 employees, and we cover a pretty broad spectrum on our portfolio, as you can see from here. So from our smart infrastructure portfolio, we cover every aspect of a building from infrastructure top to bottom, all the way to automation and digitalization. We also have a microgrid aspect of our business, and I read through your report, your climate report, that you also are looking at in the future incorporating trains or some type of public trans running off electricity. So we actually do generate that and create that as well. But I just wanted to show that if you're looking to invest in a partner, you want to invest in somebody who could future-proof kind of what you're looking to do for your 2050 goal. So another thing you look for in a partner is essentially someone who walks the walk and talks the talk. So with Siemens, our goal as well is to become carbon neutral by 2030, as you can see here. And we're actually doing a pretty stupendous job. Once again, reading through your report, I know your goal is 2050, and I saw those tiered benchmarks, that we'll talk about later. But ultimately, we want to be able to partner with you and say, we understand what you're going through, maybe on a bit of a larger scale, but we want to say, hey, we understand, like we're trying to take our buildings and make them completely carbon neutral, take our fleets, make them completely carbon neutral, et cetera. In addition to that, roughly 64% of Fortune 500 companies are starting to transition to their 2030, 2050 goals. And what I like to say is if industry drives innovation, which drives adoption. And so ultimately, if industry is driving this type of change, it'd be great to partner with someone like yourself to help you do that as well. Here we go. So ultimately, right now, buildings and how they operate is they don't really interact with the environment, and they don't typically interact with the occupant. The goal for us is to help you meet your goals and optimize not only your facilities, but really your entire community, or borough in this case. So at the end of the day, we want to provide that microgrid so we can have power generation. We want to help provide that PV aspect for any type of power generation. In addition to that, you can see little cars down there, the EV charger. But our goal is to ultimately partner with you as a long-term strategic partner and kind of future-proof what we can provide to what you would hope and your goal is for the community to look like. So it's a great little picture of kind of what we're helping customers do today. So now, I did read through your climate action plan, and I saw a number of your goals on here, as you can see, and you can tell I made this slide. But ultimately, I saw a number of things as I read through your plan, and through the beginning of it, right, converting LEDs, building envelope, installing predictive analytics for smart meters, in addition to some water aspects of the business. About your middle tier, right, your 2030 tier, there was also a look at investing a little bit more heavily into energy conservation or infrastructure products. And then if you look at your long term, ultimately, that's where I had mentioned about the rail car, the train car that you wanted to implement. So what I wanted to say here is that with Siemens' broad portfolio, we could help expedite your plan, your 2050 plan. So instead of saving 3.3%, I think the number was, on your carbon emission annually across your entire category list, as you can see here on the right-hand side, we want to help you expand that and help expedite your plan. And Siemens has the portfolio to support that. So getting into performance contracting, this is how we help you achieve it, right? So performance contracting, as you can see here, is we look at utilities and we find a way to look at your facilities, save roughly 20 to 30% on your annual utility spend. I believe yours off the top of my head is 140,000 that I read. And we try and find savings by optimizing infrastructure, buildings, helping with deferred maintenance, et cetera. And so we would take a chunk of that savings and that would help finance the project. So let me explain kind of how that process works. And if I'm going too quickly, please tell me to slow down. I'm just trying to make sure I'm keeping with your time and being respectful. So as far as building performance sustainability organizations, first we take a holistic view of your buildings, how they operate, and then how they use energy, right? So we're going to reduce the amount of energy consumption, and we're going to do it based off of an engineer analysis. Then we help you produce. So if you're looking at microgrids, or you're looking at generators, you're looking at how can we help you produce more sustainable energy. In addition to that, we procure. So we help with any type of M&V process, managing the energy consumption, and also sometimes helping you negotiate. And then lastly, we focus on protecting. So continually analyzing through an M&V process or through a predictive analytics model. I think I read in your report as well, you were looking for something where you could constantly monitor your utility data so you can see what the actual spend is and usage is for your 2050 goal. That's something we can certainly help you with, and overall incorporates into our building performance and sustainability platform. The way that this occurs is we actually use energy as a currency. And I'll say that a couple of times. And so it's just as it sounds. We find excess savings through that audit and say it's 30%. So let's just say it's 30% of your $140,000 bill, which is roughly $42,000, right? So we'll say we're going to guarantee $42,000 in energy savings. And that guarantee means that through an M&V process on an annual basis, if say we only save you 41,000, we actually owe you that 1,000. So we heavily scrutinize and are very conservative.
What's the MMV process?
So the M&V is the measure and verification process.
Thank you.
And I will get into that. So apologies. So as we're going through this process, we're looking at how your buildings operate and are using energy. And then once or if you decided to use a performance contract, you'd only have to work with one group, being us. We would work directly with you, have the contractors work with ours and your engineers. No change orders. There's no going over the price. And we're already not having to deal with plan spec or plan bid with multiple different contractors and change orders and going over the cost. We're a one-stop shop or a turnkey solution, and we guarantee our work. And we do that at our own risk because we want to make sure that the customer's meeting their goals. And I'll show you a visual of that. So those excess.
Can I ask a question? A quick question?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Two questions actually. How do you actually make money out of this?
Mhm.
And second question is, do you benefit of the tax, like the normal people, like non-municipal people, they get like tax benefits if they install solar panels on roofs and things like that. Would you basically get those benefits if you install solar panels on our roof?
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Eric.
If I could field that real quickly. Yeah, the way this works is if we did a PPA, right? Basically a power purchase agreement with you, and we installed, owned, and operated the panels, there would be an investment tax credit that still exists for the next 2 years. That investment tax credit, we could take that, and then that would impact and reduce the cost of the panels and your PPA cost. Okay, so it would directly translate into a lower cost, where municipalities can't take that investment tax credit because you don't pay taxes. So
yeah, we did the same thing with existing. I was just curious if you can do the same thing.
Yep, absolutely.
And then,
and how do we make money? We make money a couple ways. One is we can self-install controls. We can self-install a lot of the energy conservation measures, and we'd make money on installing those things. We also manage the process for you. So for instance, if you have 5 different energy conservation measures, lighting, water, building envelope, etc. When it comes to designing the solution, we do that. When it comes to putting out RFPs for subcontractors to bid on that work, we take care of that. When we get the subcontractors back, we descope, analyze, and select the best contractor for the job. We then make sure that the project is completely project managed so that you're not responsible for the outcome of the subcontractors. We are basically one throat to choke. So we are basically a specialized, energy focused project developer, okay, and installer. And so when we put together a project, of course, we're a corporation, right? There's overhead and profit on our subcontractor costs, and there are costs to do the engineering and the project management. And through all those things is how we make our money on doing the project. Okay. If the other way of doing a project like this is flat, plan and spec. Okay. So you hire an engineer to come in and design the solution. You then put out the RFPs, and then you get the RFPs back, and then you've got to analyze them, decide which ones, and you're doing all that yourself, which takes a lot of time and energy. And it also puts the responsibility for the solution working on you as a borough. Whereas the performance contracting program was designed to put the success of the energy savings and the success of the project being implemented onto the ESCO company doing the work, not on the municipality. And that was designed to streamline this kind of work within the Commonwealth. So I'm sorry if that was a long-winded answer to a very easy question.
I got it. Thank you.
So as Eric was covering, essentially how it would work is, and you can see on the left-hand side, currently you're paying just the utility company. But if we went into a performance contract, and he mentioned ECMs, right, or FIMs, which are facility improvement measures, where water conservation, if we're looking at chiller optimization, things like that, there's going to be an excess in savings because of operational efficiency. And those excess and savings are what finance the actual project. So it doesn't affect your CapEx. It's a zero cash outlay approach. So it's budget neutral. So it allows you to complete the large majority, if not all, of either your deferred maintenance or what you're looking to achieve. And especially in your plan, there was a number of them, instead of having to wait year after year after year and doing them one at a time when somewhat of the budget is available. And so after the guaranteed portion, which you can see the gold bar in the center, and move to the far right, you'll see continued savings. And that's because you're not going to lose the savings in excess. Your building is still optimized and your equipment is as well. It's just you're not having to pay off that loan portion anymore with the excess energy savings. So instead of you having to put out capital and having to finance this, you would use energy as the currency to finance the project.
Mhm.
As far as process and timeline, so there's a development process and then there's a procurement process. Development, I'll kind of talk through first. So first with the development side is we would look at a holistic view of all of your buildings, bring in our own engineers, see how they operate and use energy for a couple of hours each building. And then we would provide a preliminary analysis that would allow us to say, here's where the challenges that we found, here's where the potential generated energy savings are. And ultimately, this is what you're looking at from your guaranteed savings portion or potential savings portion. The next stage for that is you say, this makes a lot of sense. I think this was something that we would like to do. We would move into, and as you can see on the screen, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but an investment grade audit. And at that point, you're essentially saying, okay, we're going to put up a little bit of capital because now, say it's $20,000 to pay for our resources, meaning our engineers to come in for 3 months and to look at your facilities in a very granular level to find, instead of potential, those guaranteed energy savings so that we can provide a report that's very heavily engineer analysis with our engineers. And essentially we'll complete that report and present it to you at the end. Now, the investment grade audit is when you're truly bought into the concept, because we don't want to just generate a report and hopefully not do any work for the project. So there's typically on the $20,000, let's just say for this example, would be a break fee. And our hope is that we're not using that break fee. Our hope is that if you approve to do a project based off of the findings and every other metric, that money will go towards the future project that we're working on. However, if at some point you're like, well, this just doesn't make sense for us, we have to pay for our end, being that would be a break fee for us to pay for the resources that were used during that 3 months. Now, on the investment grade audit side, we make sure that you are very convinced and you are very comfortable that this is something you would like to do, because we don't want to get into the situation where, you know, we're wasting your time or anyone else's. So we're very, very focused on making sure that if we're doing an IGA, as they're called, you're going to move forward. And then as you can see there, design, install, and then the measure and verification process. So just to really hit on the measure and verification process, again, if we were saving $40,000 and we only said we only saved you $39,000, we'd owe you that $1,000. However, we've hit our number 99% of the time, and I have a slide after this that shows it. So we heavily scrutinize and are very conservative in our approach when doing the M&V and our guaranteed energy savings. And this happens on an annual basis. Now, from the procurement process, and I think Eric touched on this a bit, we'll do the preliminary assessment, and then you'd have an RFQ issued, right? So that's something where immediately you could say, okay, we're submit an RFQ, we're going to select a partner, Siemens, and then at that point, we would have done the preliminary audit, possibly the investment grade audit, and that's where you'll see both converge and you'll say sign contract, and we would move forward to finalize and start doing work on the project. Eric, would you like to comment on? Sorry, yeah.
The RFQ process is part of our public process requirement, correct?
Correct.
We would have to issue that to multiple offers. And
Yeah,
we would
correct.
consider the responses that we get. If for some reason there is an offer from a different company, would we then owe you for the preliminary assessment
no,
document?
no, not at all.
So you take the risk that you're going to outperform your competitors in that RFQ process, and we take the risk that if we don't go with Siemens, we have an engineering assessment that isn't paid for.
Yeah, so let me break this down a little bit better. So before the RFQ would be issued,
Yeah.
you may want to have, like Siemens, we'd be willing at no cost to you to look at the facilities and give you an idea of what possible savings are available and what measures would have to be implemented to get those savings.
Okay.
And that's from a 30,000-foot view, right? We're not walking subcontractors, right? We're not doing any kind of detailed analysis. At that point, if you issued an RFQ, you would, there are plenty out there to select from. You can use one of them that's already been issued. And you would then select an ESCO partner that from the qualifications. So for instance, we just responded to one at Shenandoah School District, and they had qualifications around financial stability, experience in the industry, local resources. There was a slew of different qualifications that we had to respond to. Same thing, Lackawanna County just issued an RFQ, which we responded to. Okay. At that point, if you select, then you would select your partner.
Mm-hmm.
That partner would begin the detailed audit, and we'd enter into a contract to do the audit. And that would be the detailed analysis. Now, it would include energy savings calculations that we would guarantee. It would include competitive process for pricing all of the energy conservation measures. So we would send out RFPs and get responses back from 3 contractors for each piece of the project, typically over $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
We would then put them all into a report called investment grade audit, and we would hand that to you. You then would have 3 choices. The first choice, enter into a contract with us to complete the work. Choice number 2, say, we're not ready, we're not going to do this, right? And if we had met the requirements that you asked us to meet, right? Payback period, cash flow neutral, and everything looked good, but you just decided not to move forward for whatever reason, then you would owe us what was called the break fee, right? Which is a portion of the cost to develop that investment grade audit.
Yeah.
The third option is basically to enter into contract and move on with constructing the project.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Anything else you want to touch on here, Eric?
Now, the only thing I would say is you've got multiple off ramps if you decide not to move forward, right? So for instance, if you issue an RFQ and you don't like any of the companies that responded, you could cancel the RFQ and not move forward. At the end of the IGA, you have the right to stop all of the, process and pay the break fee and keep going without ever implementing anything. Okay.
Yeah.
The important thing is that there's constant communication with the council while we're in the development of the IGA, so that we're developing the solutions you want to get implemented. And we've done this many, many times. So we've got a pretty good track record and a long history of developing projects in conjunction with cities and towns.
Excellent.
Yeah, and to quote on that part, in the past 5 years, we've generated about $1 billion in savings for state and local governments. So we have the experience, and there's a lot of success stories out there. So rest assured that if this did ever come to fruition, we've been around 170 years, so we're able to really execute on this. Mm-hmm. Any questions in regard to this process? I know it seems a bit daunting, but wanted to make sure we covered everything.
It's been around for decades, this process. There has been legislation in almost every single state in the country that supports this performance contracting model. It has different variations in different states, but it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, I believe in your state, Patty, PA, I'm in Maryland, sorry. Yeah. It's Title 62.
Yeah, that's right. So this is enabled under the state legislation, and it's a legitimate process that a municipality could participate in without any legal constraints. Obviously, correct. If we enter into kind of agreements or contracts, we'd have our council review those.
Correct.
We'd have to talk about what format we would want to go forward with before we make a decision like that.
Yeah, there are plenty of examples of contracts that are available. There's a state contract that you can piggyback on. Each ESCO has their own contract. The state contract is a bit burdensome. I think it's got the attachments up to the letter J. So we try to simplify it a little bit, but so there's multiple established and proven vehicles to get that done. But we work with each solicitor independently to address any kinds of issues, from limits of liability through, force majeure and other issues that might come up.
Yeah. Okay. And I wanted to ask you also, we've received notice of rate increases from both People's Gas and Duquesne Light within the next year. At what point do you fix does your savings computation alter according to the current tariffs that we're paying for various things?
What we'll do is we'll look at your costs for your energy over a 3-year historic period.
Okay.
And then we'll use that as the baseline. Okay. Now, oftentimes, if we know that a price increase is imminent, we can use that as an additional to the baseline, right? And we'll use that. But then when we calculate the savings over the next 15, 20 years of the program, and 15 to 20 years is a standard model, we would agree to an escalator on the utility cost, right? When calculating the energy savings in dollars. So typically the state of Pennsylvania for their contracts uses 2 to 3% escalation annually for their utility spend when they calculate the savings. Okay. In Virginia, it's 3%. In Maryland, it's also 3%. So we'd escalate those costs over the 20 years at 3% a year.
Okay, and that's standard, across the industry. So
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Right.
Okay. Do we have other questions, or are you? Let me see. Do you have more in here?
We do have some more, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time. And
there's a question in the pop-up.
Oh,
10 years, how are equipment and replacement upgrades handled after 10 years?
Yeah. Well, so depending on the life expectancy of the equipment, right? When we calculate the energy savings and the equipment life, we're going by ASHRAE standards.
Okay.
So, for instance, with lighting, we replace LED lamps. We'll take some operation or maintenance savings for the first 5 years. But we do know that even though most of the lamps are guaranteed for 10 years, that after 5 years, you're going to have some replacement. So in most cases, for those kinds of lamps, we'll provide excess stock to replace lights as they need to be. Chillers, boilers have life expectancies well beyond the 15 years that we're looking at, control systems as well. So typically when we're replacing a chiller or boiler, the life expectancy is much longer than the term of our guarantee. When there is, for instance, in solar, right? If we had battery storage or a solar program where the panels would be guaranteed for 25 or 30 years, at that point, we would incorporate into the PPA agreement the cost of replacing any defective panels that fall outside the warranty, okay? And that would all be included in the price that we would offer you to make sure that the system is operating for the full term of the contract.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay. Wait, do you have an example you were going to go through, Sal?
so we had as far as you mean this?
Yeah.
This one I sent. Yeah. So this is just an example financial overview. So, just focusing on energy savings alone. If we were to do a project, say for 20 years, and where I found this 42,000 was from your current utility spend. So roughly 140,000. We did 30% of that because on average, we save around 20 to 30% for our customers for their energy conservation. And then you could see there's operational savings and construction savings as well. But focusing just on 42, multiply that by 20 years, it's roughly an $800,000 project. So if we were going to do a project with the rough savings that we have and not including anything else, we could look at roughly doing around $800,000 of work where those energy and excess savings could finance that actual project. Now, when we start including operational savings and construction period savings, and then also maybe even more than 30% savings, then that's where we could see, okay, what does the cash flow look like for a 20-year, a 15-year? What scope are we working on? Are we working on multiple buildings, one building at a time? It really all depends on how you want to kind of break this up. But essentially, this is how the financial model would work. As far as cash flow here, it's really going to be dependent upon how this is going to be financed. So is it 100% performance contracting? Or is there going to be a $200,000 or $10,000 upfront capital just because that's what you have budgeted out for any type of infrastructure upgrades? It would really depends, and I'll get into the next slide just briefly, but Siemens is the only ESCO that's A-rated for their credit rating. But so when we look at financing, Siemens actually has their own captive bank. So we have the ability to do all sorts of financing, from anywhere from debt consolidation, reconsolidation, asset monetization, or in this case, tax exempt, which we were just looking at a moment ago. And in addition to that, when we do guarantee our savings, we do invest our own money sometimes into these projects, as far as with using our own captive banks. So going back to this example. So ultimately, in the short, right now we're looking at, if we just did very rough numbers, 42,000 in savings, rough. If we're focusing on 20 to 30%, it could roughly, after 20 years, be an $800,000 project, which would pay for and finance through energy savings for whatever your deferred maintenance is, et cetera. And that's essentially how this roughly works. And I know this is very oversimplified, but wanted to provide that so I didn't overcomplicate. Eric, anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, it depends largely on what measures are needed to generate the savings, and that's what we discover in the preliminary as well as in the detailed audit. But this gives you a breakdown. The law states that every year must be cash flow positive. So we have to generate enough savings each year to cover the payment and the measurement and verification cost, right, for the project every single year. Otherwise, it's non-compliant, right? So we definitely have to generate the savings. Now, the savings takes these three forms, right?
Just a second, just to stress that point. Basically, our borough would never have to pay you any dime, because you would get everything from our savings.
Well, yeah. So the way this would work is we would find the savings, right? And they say your bill, let's simplify it. Let's say your bill is $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
And when we got done with the project, after that initial construction period, that next year, your bill should be, let's say, $80,000 a year. Okay. You're going to take that $20,000 and you're going to apply it to the debt service for this project.
But you would handle all the financing. We wouldn't have to pay money.
So here's the other thing we do, right? Siemens, if you wanted to use Siemens Financial Services, which is a captive bank, or Siemens will put out a procurement for funding for your project, okay? We'll solicit multiple banks for responses. We'll get the responses back. We'll analyze them, prioritize them, and give you a report on which banks fit the criteria and are willing to fund the project. Then you have a choice. You can choose Siemens, you can choose Bank of America, you can choose Chase. There are multiple banks to choose from for the funding.
Got it. Thanks.
Good.
Now, the other thing is, let's run one hypothetical real quick. If, for instance, we come up with about $800,000 worth of savings to help cover your project, but you have $1.5 million worth of work you want to get done, you can still do a performance contract, finance the entire amount, and take the additional work as capital cost avoidance. But when you budgeted your energy spend for the next 20 years, you'd have to budget additional dollars to cover the cost of that, that capital cost avoidance. Okay?
but it's a way of making sure that we get done the things that need to be done in some sort of an orderly, systemic manner so that we can achieve the greatest amount of savings possible from doing whatever upgrades are necessary to be done.
Yeah, it is a very structured.
Yeah.
Siemens is a German company. We're very structured. we are exceptionally detail oriented, and so you'll have a roadmap, right? Part of what you get from the detailed audit really is a roadmap for energy savings.
Yeah.
And it's a roadmap for future energy savings because you may not include everything on the first pass.
Right.
You may want to save some stuff for later. And as we go through, you'll have a list of energy conservation measures you can implement in the future as well.
Good. Okay. All right. I think that's everything we needed to hear from you. Does anyone else have any questions at this time? And we'll go on to the rest of the agenda.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for taking the time.
And you're welcome to stay and listen to the rest of our meeting or take your leisure if you wish. And I thank you so much for coming. I'm sure we'll get back with you for further discussion later on.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good enough. All right. Next item on the agenda for Borough Property is the manager's update. Mr. Morris.
Yeah, I need to deal with a couple of these things here. First, my thing, outstanding item, there's nothing to mention. So you can just read that if you want. Now, Recreation Board, Mr. Thielacker couldn't be here, so he asked Chris if Chris could participate in the meeting. So I'm going to activate Chris as a panelist.
Okay.
Chris, you should be there if you, there you are. Did you need to me to put the handout that Tom gave me on the screen, or are you just going to talk in general?
You know, I could just talk in general.
Okay, go ahead.
All right.
Well, let me just mention before you do. I listed the same things that Tom had mentioned last month from the rec board on there. I'm not. They don't need to be read over again. But Chris has some updates, including on the tennis program, and I think that's what Tom wanted him to go into. I'm sorry, Chris, just to introduce that a little bit. Go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Steve. I appreciate that. So, hi everybody. My name is Chris Mamikos. I am on the rec board for Forest Hills, and I'm representing the rec board tonight to talk to you about the tennis courts and the tennis program. Specifically, what I wanted to talk to you about tonight is the tennis program has had very low participation. In addition, the state of the tennis courts have been in pretty bad shape. So what I'd like to do is talk to you a little bit more about that. So the tennis program in Forest Hills had probably the lowest in recent years purchases of memberships. We had a total of 15 memberships purchased in comparison to the pool, which is thriving and had over 200 memberships purchased. So of the 15 memberships that were purchased, 9 of them were senior memberships, 4 of them were individual memberships, and only 2 memberships were family memberships. I'd like to talk briefly about the programs that are offered between tennis and the swim team. So the swim team this year had over 100 swimmers. This was one of our biggest teams, probably our biggest team in over a decade. In comparison, there's no youth program for tennis. So, you know, the purpose of me joining here is we have a proposal. We'd like to propose 2 things for your consideration and for Borough Council's consideration that impact not only the tennis courts, but also the tennis program. Before I jump into that, though, I do want to talk about the revenue side to it. The 15 memberships that were purchased brought in a total revenue of $1,557. So that was the total revenue for the tennis program for 2021. It was $1,551. So after reviewing the facts of the low membership numbers, listening to feedback from concerned community members that are concerned about the tennis program and the state of the courts have been in the maintenance of the courts haven't been maintained. You know, we're looking for more, you know, better maintenance of the tennis courts. And when we talk about maintenance, not necessarily the repairs. What we're talking about is basic like cleaning and removal of debris like leaves. So that wasn't kept up well this year in Forest Hills. So what we want to propose is some options that will address all of these issues that I'm talking about tonight. So number one, what we would like to do after listening to feedback from community members, analyzing the facts of the amount of memberships, the revenue, and the state of the courts, what we would like to propose for 2022 is as follows. We would like to increase all pool memberships by $10 while adding a new benefit to those pool memberships where we allow the pool members to use the tennis courts during pool hours. The $10 increase we would like to dedicate as a way to subsidize the expenses associated with the tennis courts, such as cleaning, maintaining, and basic repairs for the tennis courts. And the second thing we'd like to propose is for the non-pool members, we would like to reduce the cost of the tennis memberships for them, because the cost of the memberships range from $75 for an individual youth or senior, all the way up to $180 for a family. And that's in addition to the cost of a pool membership if families want to and people want to participate in the pool program. So what we'd like to do is combine them into one, also giving an option for the folks that don't want to be a part of the pool membership. And we'd like to offer a reduced cost to those folks by cutting those nearly in half. So what that would look like is instead of a price range from $75 to $180, we'd have a price range of $35 for seniors and youths, all the way up to $90 for a family, with individuals that are non-seniors and non-youth having a price of $65. We feel that making it more affordable will help us drive more revenue for that particular group that are non-pool members. And by simply increasing the cost of the pool membership by only $10 and adding in the value of giving access to the tennis courts to the pool families, the expected revenue, if we have just simply the same amount of members next year that we did this year, our projected revenue just from that alone, not counting non-pool members, would be over $2,000. And again, in 2021, our revenue was only $1,557. So what I would like to do is open it up for questions for anybody that may have any questions or concerns about this plan. And as well as I'd like to hear feedback that I could take back to the rec board as well.
Any questions from council members? Mr. Tomasic and Mr. Buildinger then.
Bill, you're mute.
Oh, okay, you got me?
Yeah.
Okay. I just have, again, the questions. Going back to the tennis courts themselves, we put a ton of money into those years ago. And I guess it really didn't pay off in terms of what we, I guess, thought. We really did a lot of work, and we have the public works foreman, Jimmy Thielacker. He could attest to that. So that doesn't seem to be working out as I guess we had planned. And secondly, my question about is we are talking about in the last several years about going outside of the borough in order to get memberships. And we're talking about increasing the sponsorships by 50. And I'm still trying to find out why our own residents aren't coming to the pool. Because again, we have such a large expenditure on the pool. We lose money every year since I've been here. And that's one of the reasons why we went for the sponsorship. So like, I have no idea about the numbers of people we have in the borough that are associated with the pool. I don't have any idea about how many people might be interested in the pool, how many kids we have, but I just can't get it in my mind why we are going outside of Forest Hills when it's a taxpayer subsidized program. We're not getting our own people in there. If we're going to lose money every year, maybe there should be some way to offer this pool to more of our own residents. And, you know, I mean, maybe if we just reduce the price, and by the way, these are just, you know, thoughts out loud.
Mhm.
You know, maybe the membership is too high. Maybe we need to give passes out more to people just to get them interested in coming to the pool. But it just is a conflict in my mind of having such a high degree of money being spent every year on the pool. And we're talking about bringing people from other communities into a pool that's subsidized by the taxpayers. It just sort of doesn't make sense to me. And I wish that there would be some way to address that issue. Marcus had an idea about letting people in, you know, that if they had some kind of pass, I think he said something about a voucher for one day. So I was wondering if there was any plan to try to get people that live here more interested in coming to the pool. And if it's a losing proposition, no matter what, you know, let's just open it up to our to residents on a very low cost basis. At least get our own members coming to the pool, if that makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, if we're going to lose $50,000, I'll just throw a number out. If we're going to lose $50,000, then let it be for the people who live here in the borough and pay taxes. So that's my one comment. I'll be off council here in December, but I just think it's something worth looking into now that the pool season is going to end.
Yeah, yeah. You said a lot of great things there, Mr. Tomasic. I think the first thing that I took down is, you know, when we talk about this holistically, like this really, you know, while this presentation was about the tennis courts, I think it's good to look at both the tennis courts and the pool. And when we look at the pool, normally, not counting 2020, because of the pandemic year, the year prior, we lost between, I think it was $50,000 or $60,000 on the pool alone, not even taking the tennis courts into consideration. I'll tell you though, this year, we've had our best year for the pool in years. And when I say best, we did lose money. We only lost $30,000 though. And when we talk about opening, yes, we have opened it up to folks outside of the community. We've opened it up to 30 memberships. Of the 202 memberships, only 30 of those were from outside of the community. So, you know, the rec board feels that the pool is a great attraction, especially within the community. We feel that it is accessible enough within the community. We're very happy with the participation within the community. I think the proposal here is to enhance the value of the pool membership. In the way we would do that is by unlocking the door to the tennis courts. We're locking our community members out of that pool, from the pool out of the tennis courts for only $10 a membership, per year. Open up those tennis courts, add some additional value. I think that that's something that, while it doesn't reduce the cost of the membership, it might make it a little bit more attractive. And it'll also help us. Right now, the tennis courts unfortunately sit vacant.
I'm not objecting to that at all. Yeah. And if that's where you're going, you're missing my point. My point is, if we're going to lose, and it's been around $50,000, on a regular basis, give or take. My point again is, if we're losing money, and by letting people in from outside the community, what difference does it make if we're losing money and we try to encourage and let our own residents access to the pool more? That's my point, and I'll end it right there. I just food for thought. I really don't want to get into discussing it, okay? Thank you.
I have
Mr. Budinger, yes.
I looked Cindy handily submitted her end of the season report today. Yeah. Tennis, Program, granted, it's very small and the courts are definitely underutilized. It cost us like $1,800 and the revenue is $1,600. So essentially we lost $200 on tennis. Granted, we don't utilize our $150,000 tennis court, which is bad. But I'm against mingling the pool with tennis because essentially people who have a pool pass but don't play tennis subsidize tennis, and families who do both, they save $90 or whatever the family membership is in tennis. So I think we're kind of shifting money from one type of family to the other. People who use a pool and don't play tennis have to pay more money. People who do both have to pay significantly less money. So, and by the way, Bill, the pool actually this year, they had a record year. They only, in brackets, lost 30,000 compared to the regular 50,000. So it's actually going, the pool is actually going in the right direction. I don't want to mix it. I think tennis, our tennis program died when we lost our coach. So I think we need to think other ways how to improve our tennis program, like coaching and things like that. You know, obviously.
Well, we did have a coach 2 years ago, Marcus, and 2 years ago, our revenue wasn't much more than the $1,500. So I respectfully disagree that I don't think it's the coach, because the coach we had 2 years ago was also a really good and engaging coach. But the way that the tennis program stands now, it's failing. We have 15 members, and of those members, 9 of those are seniors. And so when we look at this from a financial standpoint, although the tennis program is a wash in terms of profit, like, or revenue and the expense, the proposal here would actually increase the amount of revenue that we would get. And for only $10, that's an increase in the pool pass, less than what the inflation is. It's only $10. So by opening it up, years ago, before we invested all this money into the tennis courts, the tennis courts were open to the folks to use at the pool. So the ask here is, could we go back to the way that it was? Because back then we had a lot more people using it. Currently, the taxpayers invested a lot of money, and those courts are vacant nearly all day, every day.
I know, but I don't think people who don't play tennis subsidize tennis. That's my point. But we can't find a resolution tonight. I think we should just.
Well, so if that's the case, then Marcus, would you be open to not charging the $10 extra and simply opening?
No, I mean, we can't find a solution tonight. I think I take your ideas and we have to think about it, but not tonight.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, because I mean, we're losing for the pool. We lost 30,000 this year, and that was a good year. For the tennis program, we broke even with only 15 members, and that we broke even with 1,500. If we threw away that 1,500, that would be a small fraction of what we lose on the pool. But we would open it up to at least the community members that purchase pool passes and help justify.
I'm open, but yeah, we won't find a resolution tonight. So, but thank you.
Are there any other concerns about this? This, and again, this unanimously passed the rec board. In the rec board meeting, this proposal. So this is something that we would like to approach Borough Council about. So if there are concerns, we would from the building in property group, we would love to hear them.
Well, I think the need to make the tennis courts amenable to people's use, making it more accessible might be improvement, making it more attractive. I don't know if adding a coach is the critical difference or not, but I don't know if tennis continues to be a popular sport among people. I know we had some of our tennis courts converted to pickleball. I'm not sure what the revenue implications are of that, but they're in a different location than the pool. Are there any other questions about this? Any other comments? Add?
If I could,
yeah,
Chris, the only thing I would say is anything you want to take back to the rec board, I would ask that they get back to us as soon as possible. We started the budget in August, and if there are going to be any changes, I'm going to give them a first draft in October with the first committee meeting. Okay. So if there are any recommendations or anything, especially with fees and revenues, because those will come, some of that will come later. I'd like to get that as soon as possible from the rec board. I had mentioned that, I think, in an email when I sent that stuff to Barry, and also I mentioned it to Cindy. So just as soon as we can, because we kind of drag out the budget process on purpose so we have enough time to do things and not pack everything back into the last month or two like they used to do years and years ago here. So if you could just make sure, and we get any input so the committee can review this, especially both this committee and finance, I'd appreciate it.
Will do. Thank you, Steve, and thanks everybody else for having me tonight.
Thank you, Chris. If nobody has anything, not had anything for Chris, the next thing we have on here is the engineers and
Yes.
foreman reports. So we should move on to that because we're,
Yes, I know, I'm sorry. Mr. Gilliland, please.
Chris, thanks.
You're welcome.
Good evening.
Yeah.
I only have two items under engineers report. First, the pickleball court, there's no news there. The paving project keeps getting pushed back because we keep having rain, but it is now scheduled for the week of September 13th. That's not next week, but the week after. That would be the whole.
Dave, you just went mute. Dave,
Dave, we can't hear you.
Dave, you just went mute. David Gillen,
We can't hear you.
you're mute again.
We can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Yeah. Oh,
How about now?
yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, my laptop screws up. Sorry. I'm not sure what you heard and what you didn't. I'll repeat the whole report. The pickleball court will be paved when the rest of the streets are paved. Right now, that is scheduled for the week of September 13th. It keeps getting pushed back because we keep having rain. So hopefully it'll be done before the end of September. That's about the best I can promise at this point. Any questions on that? If not, we only have one other item on my report, which is the blight remediation grant. Back in May, we got a $19,800 grant to demolish 21 Marion, which has since been sold and is going to be renovated. So if we want to switch that to another address, we will need to get that into the state as soon as possible. I know there were some addresses thrown out last month, but in talking to Mr. Branzo, I don't know that those are viable options. And I have not gotten anything else. So if there is any other addresses that you want to consider, I would need that as soon as possible.
Will that money have to go back to the DCED if we do not use it for demolition?
Yes.
Is there any other purpose we can put it to?
No,
Grant
It's
condition.
I don't think we're going to have anything else either.
Okay,
No, it's the whole program is called blight remediation. So it's strictly for removal of blighted properties.
we can't use it for painting business district properties?
No.
No,
All right,
that's all I had, unless there's any other questions.
okay. Any other
No.
questions? All right, thank you. Mr.
Jimmy.
Thielecker, you have a report for us, please?
Yeah, the only thing I have is it's on the sheet there, Avenue L playground equipment. The main play structure is the main supports are starting to deteriorate real bad, and they're wood. And it's not a safety hazard yet, but it could come next year that we may have to close it down because it could become a safety hazard if the supports get a lot worse over the winter. Depends how bad the winter is. We have one cost estimate. We would get more, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention. So that if you wanted to do something with it, I had talked to Steve, and that's all. There's a copy of the drawing, a picture on the back of your report there.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's two different versions of it, but that's just one example from Mark Yaka from Compan, who we used before, but we don't have to use them. And it would still probably be something you'd have to bid or at least look at a state contract at which they may be under, but just so you're aware of that. This is just for you guys to start thinking about. What I'm going to do is keep this on the agenda for you to consider as we go through the rest of the year here.
so that would go into the budget request for borough property then?
Well, it would be a capital item.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I don't think there was anything else.
Okay, is there any other issue on borough property that we need to consider? Anyone else have an issue? Otherwise, I think we're finished.
Okay, I'm going to go right to Public Works because rather than delay, we're already running behind here. So if you guys are okay with that, I know Mr. Goral's not here. Mr. Lawrence, you're the only committee member here. Are you okay with me starting?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Mander's update, just a couple of things. Most is just informational. First, Three Rivers Wet Weather, there's two items from them, and you can read this information about the consent orders. I highlighted a couple of key areas on there. I'm not going to go into any of that. The second item that is part of this, though, there was an email I sent to you earlier from them, which kind of summarized some of the stuff about the draft consent decree. And there was a draft copy with that. You had seen previously something they referred to as Exhibit B in an email. If anybody's missing that, just email me back and I'll send that out to you too. I didn't send that at the same time. That had come earlier, I think maybe about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So just take a look at the information from Three Rivers Wet Weather there. And don't forget that if you're interested, they are having their conference in October. So if anybody wants to sign up, there is information on their website if you'd like to do anything with that. Take a look at the email, though, that I sent you today. They are going to be having some elected officials meetings soon. And oh my God, my screen is going crazy here. They are going to be having some meetings soon for elected officials. One of them may be here. They're unfortunately scheduled on days when we have committees. So the one being here may be at the October committee meeting date, the first meeting date over at the Rec Lodge, which would at least make it convenient for somebody to go, at least one person from council to go, or maybe more if you wanted to, and still participate in these committee meetings if you wanted to. But they're going to be trying to explain a little bit more about what's going on at those meetings. That I'll give you more information when I have it, though I don't have anything else. Anybody have any questions about Three Rivers Wet Weather? If not,
No.
I attached the PennDOT winter maintenance agreement update to the information I gave. That's one of your handouts. There is no need to do anything with that unless you want to get out of the winter maintenance agreement. I don't see any reason to do that. They are increasing it over what it was the last couple of years. The agreement was originally signed in 2019. That's about a $7,000 increase. Of course, it's based on how much we use too, but you can see the roads that are covered in the attachment. So just take a look at that. There's really nothing to talk about unless you want to make a major change there and try to negotiate something new with PennDOT, which I don't think would be successful, or get out of the agreement, which probably doesn't make much sense. But that's up to you. Any thoughts on that? Okay, I don't have anything else then, so you can move on to the foreman and engineers report if you're okay with that. I know the foreman has a lot to talk about. Go ahead, Dave.
Thank you. Okay, the first item I have is the MS4 detention pond project. There's been no change on that. We're still waiting for DEP to review our permit. They have this. Bless you, that's my dog sneezing. They have said that they are not sure what type of permit we need, and they have changed the forms that they wanted us to submit several times. So we're trying to get them to straighten that out. That is kind of a unique situation down there. The 2021 paving program, as I mentioned, under Borough property, is hopefully going to restart the week of September 13th, pending the stoppage of some rain for a while. There are 3 streets remaining: Braddock, Decatur, Avenue A, and then the pickleball court. The Fall Run Interceptor project, the memorandum of understanding has been signed by all towns except Wilkinsburg. Wilkinsburg has stated that they will sign it after their September 15th meeting, at which time they hope to approve it. But we are going ahead with our plan to advertise the project and hopefully open bids before the end of September. So next month we should have some bids to take action on and get that project started. And finally, the contracts for the repair of the collapsed storm sewer and the restoration of the concrete after pipe repair for the Ashley Court storm sewer were awarded on August 18th at your last meeting. Work is scheduled to be underway September 8th and be completed within 10 days. And that concludes my report, unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Dave?
None here.
Jimmy, you're up.
Okay, I got my list of projects for September. If anybody has any questions, you can talk to me about it or
I know that good to mention the last couple of days with the rain and that they're delayed in getting stuff ready for the park for the community day on Monday, just so you know. That's one reason why some things have been pushed back, and that's probably going to take up a couple of days now into Saturday, probably, right?
No, I don't think so, Steve. I think
no?
we're gonna.
Okay.
I think we're gonna be okay. They made a lot of progress today,
Okay.
and as long as we have no emergencies tomorrow, we should be in pretty good shape.
Okay. Any questions for Jimmy on the foreman's list?
I actually have,
Marcus?
before he goes into the list for September, can you give us an update on all the floodings and whatever you had to do? I know at least in Cherry Valley, you had to do some pumping.
Yeah, we got a call about 7 o'clock for 2 houses that were getting flooded basements. Right away, we took our pumps up, we put them in the manhole, 2 of them at the bottom of Forest Hills Road at Cherry Valley. We pumped to about, I think, lunchtime, 12 noon. It saved a lot of damage to a lot of houses by doing that. We also, the fire department was starting to get sewage coming up. I put a big 4-inch pump in the manhole right in the parking lot behind the firehouse there, and it saved that from damage. And we checked Kenmore. Kenmore wasn't real bad. We also checked Fillmore Road. That was okay. And then we had a couple trees come down on power lines. One up behind Roman Bistro there, and then one on Braddock Road. We had Braddock Road closed for a while. Other than that, I didn't hear of anything else.
But basically, the people in Cherry Valley owe you a huge thank. I think we would have way more than 2 houses flooded without that pumping, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely you would have.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is, I guess, Marcus, you were talking about this 13 Roxbury Road, and you had a request that there's still a stump up there.
Yeah, I just want to get an update on timing. So what I see is exactly what I will tell her. I think she'll be happy with that.
Okay.
And I think it's outside of your expertise. I believe that in Sharp Committee, they probably have a replacement tree already lined up, what they want to plant there.
Yeah, Dawn, you have to talk to Dawn about that. He takes care of that.
Yeah, he'll report next week.
Yeah, I figured.
All right, item number 3 is self-explanatory there. The next item, number 4, I don't know whether you're all aware of it. We lost one of our public works trucks about 4 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday morning when the heavy rain was hitting. Luckily, the truck was parked outside. It wasn't in one of the garages. It could have been catastrophic if it was inside. It's a total loss. The fire investigation team from the Allegheny County was out this morning again. They were back, and they're pretty sure because of the intense fire, the way it burned, they can't pinpoint it, but they're real positive. It definitely started in the motor, something electrical up near the 2 main batteries with the cables. It also did some damage to our salt bin a little bit, and the speed trailer that was belonging to the cog, and actually to the dunking tank, which was basically out of service anyway, but it burnt some of the wood on that also. The one thing I'd like to request is we've notified the insurance company. We had full coverage on the truck. As I told you before, trucks are really hard to get. I've actually located a chassis at one of the dealership. They're supposed to get back to me either tomorrow or the first part of next week with a price on it. I've contacted the body company, and I'm putting an estimate in of around $100,000. we're not sure what we're going to get back on the insurance. The truck was valued at $70,000. It was a 2012 truck. So I'm guessing we may get around $40,000 from the insurance company. That's a guess. You know, we'll have exact numbers. For the meeting next week, I'm asking you, this was one of our main trucks for the winter snow removal season. If I come up with some pretty close pricing, I'd like to at least lock in that chassis that's at the dealership. And like I said, I'll definitely have some prices next week for the next week's meetings.
That'll come to finance.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably finance, yes. And Jimmy, you want to bring up the alarm system? Jimmy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big building in the back, which we do have heat in, electricity, we do not have a fire alarm system in there. I think it's very important to get a fire alarm system in that building. We have well over $1 million worth of equipment in there right now.
Well, let me add to this that we still have a couple of buildings for fire covered by Omega. We've been switching stuff over to SSA, if you remember. In fact, SSA is working on putting cameras down there, which I will talk about somewhere. I don't know where I have that. Maybe it's on Committee of the Whole next week. I know I had it somewhere. But we're working on that, and we might want to switch everything over to SSA. We might want to consider then also having them alarm that newer building as well. And we don't have any estimates yet on that, but that's something to consider. If that truck had been in there, there would have been nothing that would have gone off in advance in that new metal building in the back. So that would have been a problem. So we'll update you on that as we can.
I'm glad nobody was hurt.
No, nobody was hurt.
So that's all for now, Jim. We can give them more of an update next week, hopefully. You can go on.
Okay, the last thing I have is number 5. The black decorative light poles that are along Armour Boulevard that are lit during part of the night there along the sidewalk. We used to be able to get, when people hit them, as long as they had insurance and didn't hit and run us and take off, we were able to get the insurance money, and we would also get the money for installation, but we did the installation. So we were able to build up a surplus and usually buy some extra poles with it. We are down to 1 pole, and right now we've had 2 hit. So I don't even have enough poles to put back in because the last 3 have been hit and runs. So I'm asking you folks, if you want to replace these poles, we need to come up with some money to purchase some more. It takes probably 3 months, 2.5 months to 3 months to get these things in. We are already over budget. We take it out of the traffic light maintenance budget list item. And like I said, on here, you'll see it was like $3,055 in 2018, but I'm getting updated prices, but they haven't called me back yet.
So I guess that's something else we'll probably consider under finance next week, if that's okay. Anything else, Jimmy? Anybody have any questions for Jimmy?
No.
Well, that's all I have for Public Works. If everyone's okay, we can move on from there to Ops and Policy. Any last minute things?
No, let's go to Ops and Policies.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Dave. All right, I'm going to go right to Ops and Policy. Manager's update. I'm ready to go, Mr. Lawrence, if you're okay.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, just a couple of items that are really for information only right now. We have a request for someone who would like to consider installing a community garden. They'd like to address the committee, but they weren't available tonight. So I gave you the name of that person with contact information and what they were looking at. And they'd like to know if they can come to a future committee meeting, if that's okay with the members, and come up, address you with their idea on what they would like to do with the community garden. I assume there's no objection. That's really up to Mr. Lawrence as chair.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay. So once I hear back from them, I don't know if anybody wants to call them in between. I mean, we've already talked, but If you want to call them, you have the number there. If not, as soon as I can, I'll get them scheduled. The second thing is that the staff and I, particularly Allison and I, have asked Steve Corbel to look at whether or not we needed to amend the dye testing ordinance. And he suggested it would make sense, and he asked me to bring it up tonight under ops. He will not be at the meeting next week either, by the way. So right now, the current ordinance provides the option of the borough doing a dye test whenever a house is sold. But we've almost never done that. In fact, we've gotten to a point now where we eliminated that, and that's not our policy anymore. Our policy basically is to have the resident get a registered plumber who will do the dye test and then provide us with the information. So I'd like to amend the ordinance if council's okay with that, and take that out where the borough would do the dye test. The only exception is that on the avenues, A, B, C, et cetera. Oh, wait a minute, is there a C? No. Is there a C? Yes, I don't remember. Anyway, Jimmy's not listening to me. So the avenues, we need to have the crew there whenever the plumber is doing a dye test, because I don't know if, and none of you were probably on council when this all started, but in that part of the avenues, there is actually, it's almost like a dual line, sanitary and storm, and they're kind of connected, almost like this, one on top of the other. And so we need to make sure that there's somebody there to show them what the proper line is that they're testing. That's probably the only place we have that. So we would like to have that inserted in there, that's a requirement. So if you're okay with moving forward with that, Steve can draft an amendment. I don't know if you want to consider that more further and talk about it further, but like I said, he will not be at next week's meeting either. So that's why he asked me just to bring it up tonight.
I don't know if anybody else had any thoughts, but it seems to me that makes perfect sense. Our ordinances should be accurate, and we should make those changes. Unless anybody has any thoughts, I think we just move forward with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, I'll ask Steve then if nobody else has anything to move ahead on that, and he can report next whenever he's next here. That's all I have, Mr. Lawrence. I did, by the way, for you had requested the outside burning ordinance review, and I put on there on the agenda, the handouts, the text of the language we have right now for everybody's edification. So I'm done.
All right, yeah, we don't really need to make any decisions tonight, but I wanted to bring up to you folks that we have a pretty strict outside burning ordinance, basically can't do it. And with fire pits and chimeneas and those things becoming popular over the last decade, and then the pandemic, we decided I don't know when it was, but we decided that we would suspend enforcement of that ordinance so that, because people should be outside, not inside. And we're going into the fall where people are going to be doing it again. What we thought at the time was that we probably should visit this. The ordinance probably is not representative of the, this is probably an old ordinance written before outside fire pits, and a lot of people have them. Mr. Corbel had mentioned that the Allegheny County ordinance is more liberal, allowing for some degree of these things. And what I thought was we might want to consider aligning our ordinance, changing it to align with the Allegheny County one. I sort of don't like the idea of in perpetuity not enforcing ordinances, and probably this is a difficult one to enforce. So my suggestion would be is in October, we asked Mr. Corbel to explain the Allegheny County law and consider whether we would like to make a change. Any objections to that idea?
Marcus has his hand up.
Marcus? Yeah, go ahead.
Our chief mentioned in the past, as long as you have a bag of marshmallows and some sticks next to the fire pit, you're legal. But I totally agree, we should update to what everyone else is doing, like the county would be perfect.
Yeah, and again, his point was correct, but it's a little tongue in cheek, and that we really don't want to be handling our ordinances by checking for marshmallows. So if it's okay, I'll talk to Mr. Corbel, and we can look at it in October.
I totally agree.
Okay, thanks. On the bench issue, again, I'd like to get people to think about this a little bit. The one thing we need to do is have Mr. Thielacker present what is the appropriate model of bench that he thinks we should get. And if we agree on that, then that would be the standard we would follow. But the one thing I was thinking about is this is kind of a little bit of a one-off. Somebody wants a memorial bench, and that's nice, so we're going to maybe go ahead with that. But maybe we should use this time as an opportunity to say, hey, let's kind of create a little template here. If you are interested in a memorial for a resident, or perhaps want to make a gift to the borough, this is one option that we have all lined out for you. And it would include the price and the cost of the installation of the bench. We would have to make some decisions about how you would apply to do it, and that we would be the ones that decide where it goes or if it can go someplace. But anyhow, so that, you know, somebody calls up on a Tuesday morning, hey, I'd like to have a memorial in the borough for someone who just passed away or whatever. And we can, you know, the borough manager can say, here's an option that we are encouraging people to do, and this is what it would cost you, and this is how it would work. Anybody have any thoughts on that one, rather than just do a one-off on this particular thing?
I have some thoughts on that. I like the idea of having a template and have a sample of what people would be able to select. But I've had a couple of people ask me about trees, and I think we should make an option available if people want to plant a memorial tree that could be put into one of the parks, perhaps to replace canopy that is getting elderly, and doing it as a way to memorialize people by putting a tree with a little plaque on it. I think those kinds of things are frequently done in memorial services. And in addition to benches, it would give us a way to have some attention paid to our replacement of trees in strategically appropriate places.
No, I have no objection. I think I think it'd just be nice to have a template, and if it's going to include trees, that's great. But I think it would direct people's, you know, they're not sure what they want, and we could say, here are two really nice options for you.
Exactly.
So, okay, if no one has any problems with that, maybe Mr. Thielacker can, when he's not dealing with all the other crises, basically pick out what he thinks, or a couple options, and we can look at it and then get going with this.
Jack, can I bring something up before you move on from this real quick?
Sure.
Just want to remind you, if you recall, back when we built this building, there were plans to include a few outside benches. In fact, the library is planning on donating a bench to put one nearby. And we do have some space around here to do that. And actually, Jim and I were getting ready to do that with a couple of bike racks that we had originally planned for. You may recall that I had put money aside for buildings. So that was part of the thing. Does anybody want me to wait on that then, in case we end up with somebody who wants to do that? I hate to hesitate. I hesitate to do that because we've already waited this long. I know I've been slowing some things down here. I don't mean to keep slowing them down, but.
No, that's okay. No, I would say go ahead. It might be nice to maybe use the same style of bench that we finally choose.
Right.
But no, you need benches, and you know, maybe in the future somebody will say, "Hey, can I put my mom's name on that bench?" And maybe we can, you know, it could also, like universities, they build a building and then 20 years later they find somebody to put their name on it for $1 million.
Sure.
So,
and Jack, Mr.
Okay,
Tomasic
that's fine.
Mr. Tomasic has his hand raised too, Jack.
Yes, Mr. Tomasic.
You're muted, Bill. Bill.
I'm sorry. I had, now I lost my train. Oh, you can put a plaque. I think the people that made the suggestion didn't want a name on the bench, but they were looking to have a plaque next to it. So maybe we could put the bench in and then a plaque at a later time to dedicate it.
Okay.
That's what we did with the trees, if I'm not mistaken, for Ted.
Okay,
And
Yeah.
we have a suggestion in the chat that engraved paving stones for the path would be good too. We do have bricks in the entryway to the Borough building, and you can
Yeah.
put engraved names on those for memorial.
well, where do you mean bricks on the entryway to the Borough building?
You know, around where the flagpole is.
No, that's you can't put that there. That is the original flag burning area. That's what that was dedicated to. That's not for memorial.
Okay, sorry.
So, okay. Well, I think we're on a good path here, so I think we can move on to the next subject,
Okay.
unless anybody has anything else to add. Did Bill?
No, that's all we have.
Okay. Okay. Good. Then the next thing is the savvy citizen issue.
Yeah.
Do you want to pick up on that, Mr. Morris?
Yeah, I can briefly. I summarized what Kenny had given us, Ken Riley, the intern, from the last couple of meetings and from his report, where he recommended Savvy Citizen. The main thing he recommended is establishing protocols, which we could do. And he also suggested, I summarized it as a czar, but his actual thing wasn't so much a czar as to make sure that we had guidelines for engaging in these things, how, who, what, so that it either, for example, doesn't become political or it's not handled by one person at the expense of somebody else, et cetera.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing he was talking about more, that we establish some things. He didn't really give us samples of that. I think that's something though that, I know Angelo and you have been working with that, and the three of us can probably come up with some things that council can review. We can try to look at some other places that are doing that as well. And I think the protocols need to be pretty basic. The main thing is you want to make sure it's something that's informational and not something that's just used for one person's purposes or another.
No, I don't think it's rocket science to put together those protocols, and you're right. I think the three of us could come up with things, and you may be able to talk to some other borough managers, and they may have something.
And we do have some, I'm sorry, what? Go ahead.
Mount Lebanon has a very good program. You might want to look at them. They use Mount Lebanon. They use Savvy Citizen too.
Yeah, I think Wilkins is using Savvy Citizen too. Well, one thing we can do if council wants, we do have money put aside. I did that in the budget when this all came up. Put some money aside. You'll see it in the crime resistance section where Swift Reach is. I essentially doubled that budget. Okay, I didn't know for sure how we were going to use it, so I stuck the money there. It doesn't have to stay there, but we can afford, if you want to start engaging Savvy Citizen, we can start with them, and they maybe even be able to give us some protocols, et cetera. I just need to take that lead from you folks as to whether or not, when you want to engage that and how you want to go about that, whether you want to do it immediately, you want to still look at it a little bit further, or what. I just need some guidance from you on that.
Well, I can make my suggestions, see if the other committee members have any ideas, but I think we should go ahead with the Savvy Citizen. We've really done a lot of legwork to evaluate this, and we've come back to Savvy Citizen. And you folks, you and the chief were talking about that even a year ago. So we had this intern, came to the same conclusion. Now he's got some other ideas that we do have to consider folding into the whole communications plan, but that doesn't mean we can't just get going with Savvy Citizen. Unless anybody objects, I think let's get going.
I agree.
Well, if you're okay with that, then I'll contact them and see what the initial steps are. And if there's anything that requires any kind of agreement with you folks or whatever, I'll bring it up to you, of course, first. Okay. Because you always approve agreements, so you don't just have me sign off on things. So I'll see, and we'll see if we can't get that moving within the next month or two.
Okay.
And then Mr. Tomasic has his hand raised. I'm sorry. Oh, no, never mind.
He doesn't. Okay. And then this fall, I think we need to go on and make some decisions about the rest of what's in that report. We had it done. We spent the money on it. So let's make decisions, not let it rest.
Yeah, because he also talked about, I'm sorry, Jack, go ahead.
No, Please.
He also talked about the Tree City Times with some suggestions.
Yeah.
He talked about the website with some suggestions. And then, of course, Angela worked with him very intimately. So he has a lot of those ideas already.
Yeah.
So I think what you should probably take a look, let's get the Savvy Citizen started, but you all have a copy of his final report. Maybe read the couple of pages toward the end about the website and about the Tree City Times. Because, you know, as we get into the budget season, it may be I don't want to say it's too late, but it may be cutting it close to make a major change with the Tree City Times for the 2022 budget, but it's something you can certainly start if you want to look into that.
Yeah.
But I would go through what he was suggesting too, and then get some other input.
Yeah, I would like maybe in October, we might even push it to Cal so that everyone can, because if we move forward his suggestions about the Tree City Times, that's a big step. I don't really have any problems with the idea, but I think we want to discuss it and then make a decision.
Well, if you'd
Not
like,
let things rest.
I could try to cut and paste just his information on the Tree City Times to the agenda for the October ops meeting if you want, Jack, and then we can take a look at it there.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Then more likely people will have looked it over.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll add it to October.
And then I think
And
that
Bill's asking a question again. Bill, you have to push the button, Bill. Bill, you're muted. Sorry.
Are you done with the committee yet, Jack?
No, there's.
no, go ahead. What?
Oh, no,
Would you like to
I
add?
want to wait till you're done.
I have just one announcement under your committee. Jack, if I may.
Yes, please.
We received notice on Thursday, or Friday rather, that we received the $5,000 grant for a complete streets policy. I think that should come to the Ops and Policy Committee, and when we get the formal letter of notice, which we should get October 1, I would like to put that on the Ops and Policy agenda for action, if you would like to allow that.
Okay, thanks. I'm actually going to add one more thing, just to warn you of something that's coming up. There's been a movement, it started in Fox Chapel and it's being driven by a member of the Fox Chapel Council about restricting the use of asphalt sealers that include coal tar in them. That went to the EAC, the information about it went to the Environmental Advisory Council, and they've made their review, and they suggest that we should actually pass an ordinance forbidding it. I'm not planning to discuss it, it wasn't on the agenda, but I think in October we will need to look at that. It can either go on Ops and Policies or it could be pushed to Cal because it would end up in an ordinance. My suggestion is Mr. Corbel has dealt with this ordinance running through about, I think, Ross, McCandless, a couple others, and he could probably very succinctly outline the issues for you so you could decide whether you want to address this issue, whether it's really not worth paying attention to, or you want an ordinance. But just want to warn you that's coming along. I can forward the technical information to everyone if you'd like me to do that.
Yes, it would be good because I have no clue why.
Okay. Very simply, it's not good, but the issue is it's probably not very particularly widely used. So, but we can go over that later. And I'm done, I believe. So I think Mr. Tomasic has something to bring up.
Yes, and again, this is not an agenda item, and I'm not opening it for discussion because that would violate the rule. But my question is, I raised that issue about the pool passes and so on back under the policy, I guess that was borough property.
Yep.
But I believe that it should be either under ops and policy or finance, one or the other. To restate the points, the idea that $30,000 is a number that we're dealing with is a false narrative. A few years ago, we put 350,000 plus into that pool. We don't count that every year when we're talking about how much this pool cost us. We haven't annualized that kind of stuff. So if wherever it belongs, either on ops and policy, all right, or finance or committee of the whole, I don't care. But I would really like to make sure that we have that thing discussed. And if it's okay, we could do it under the committee of the whole next week. But I would like everybody to make sure they think about that issue that I brought up in terms of our own residents subsidizing residents from other communities using the pool. I just don't think that's the right way to go here. And that's what I want to make sure we discuss in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, if no one objects, let's push that to Cal, because I think, and the other thing is, yes, this is not a decision to be made lightly or quickly, and I think we really want to hash out all the issues that are coming up with that thing. So I think Cal might be the best place.
For next week.
Yeah, I don't want to clarify. Just want to clarify. We open it up to other residents just to open up more, to get more revenue, and that they pay more money. So it was an idea we did to increase our revenue and not to open up our pool per se. People were actually really against it. So it's not really, it's misleading, but we can talk about it next week.
Yeah, so let's handle that next week.
It'll be on Cal next week. Okay.
Okay, thanks a lot. Anything else for this ops and policies? And I think we're done.
Okay, we can move right to public safety then.
I'm ready whenever you are.
Okay, I just have one reminder. I started to bring this up before under outstanding items. We are currently working on restoring the cameras at the Public Works Garage. The chief and the foreman and I have been looking at that. As you know, we had that, of course, around the building when the old building was down there. So we're working on that with SSA, and we're also looking at a couple of exterior cameras up here just to increase the perimeter and maybe also take advantage of the fact that we're near the rec lodge and get some other cameras that we can't quite put over there going out to the parking lot and the ball fields and things like that. So we're just investigating those costs. Those are mainly things, again, that are part of the building budget that we have money for. So I just want you to be aware of that as we look at that. And I will let you know of any more information as we get it. That's all I have, Mr. Overlayer.
Thank you. Next, utility and other bills for the fire department. It's totally, I think it's almost monthly, the same thing. So everything is routine. So if anyone against anything of those? Nope.
No objection.
Thanks. EMS report is attached. Chief's report. Chuck, sorry for making you wait so long. Your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Erbeldinger. One of the things I wanted to mention this evening is, as school has started, and I'm sure you've seen the school buses out there, a question has been posed to me from a few people about passing school buses on Ardmore Boulevard. And when it comes to school buses, divided highways mean a physical structure between two roadways. So, for example, on Ardmore Boulevard, there's a school bus that stops where the public health building is there. It's the old Thompson Insurance building. There's a doctor's office, there's a daycare there. The school bus usually stops on the eastbound side of that. So that means that vehicles traveling westbound on Ardmore are able to proceed. They do not have to stop. There's, even with the red lights on, they can proceed as there's a physical division in the highway. Now, just the opposite situation occurs on Greensburg Pike, where there's a 4-lane roadway, but there is no division there, so that every vehicle on both sides of the 4 lanes has to stop for those school buses when they activate their red lights. Again, there's been some confusion about that. I've had a couple questions. Some people believe they're supposed to stop on Ardmore. They're not. And people on the Greensburg Pike, we try to keep them in check with that, because sometimes I know that people do get confused with this, but I wanted to make this clear. I'm going to reiterate this again at the regular meeting coming up on 2 Wednesdays. So again, this is something to remind people, this is that time of year, and just the overall in general, be cautious. There's kids out there now, because there are quite a few kids out there based on what I've seen when I drive around at 7 in the morning. There are a lot of children out there standing on corners waiting for the buses. And again, you've noticed too that we have a little more darkness in the morning than we used to have, as it gets lighter a little later now. So we have to be a little more careful. That's all I have, Mr. Erbeldinger.
Thank you. Unfortunately, the commuters on Ardmore, they won't hear that today. So I can feel like if people are stopping, there will be lots of angry honking behind them. But thank you.
Thank you.
That's all we had for public safety. Anyone else has any issues for public safety? All right, that's it for tonight. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, I'm going to end the meeting and stop the live streaming. Thank you. See you next